Jiwoo Park stood at the viewing window of the transport ship and stared at Nexus Prime. The massive space station looked like a metal city floating among the stars. Thousands of lights blinked on its surface. Ships of every size and shape moved around it like busy insects. This was the Galactic Defense Academy, the most important military school in known space. Her hands shook a little as she picked up her small bag. Everything she owned fit inside it. Back on Earth's Sol colony, people had called her crazy for trying to get into the academy. Humans had only been part of the galactic community for 50 years. Most alien species still saw them as new and primitive. "Attention passengers," the ship's computer said in perfect standard galactic. "We are now docking at Nexus Prime. Please gather your belongings." Jiwoo walked toward the exit with the other new cadets. She was the only human on the transport. The other cadets were much bigger than her. Some had 4 arms, others had thick armor-like skin, a few had tentacles instead of legs. They all looked strong and confident. Nobody talked to her during the trip. When she tried to speak to a tall blue alien, it just looked at her with 3 eyes and walked away. Another cadet with crystal-like skin made a sound that might have been laughter when she passed by. The docking bay was huge and filled with noise. Hundreds of new cadets from dozens of different worlds moved in groups. Jiwoo had studied all the major species before coming here, but seeing them in person was different. Some were twice her size. Others moved in ways that seemed impossible. "New cadets, form lines by species," shouted a voice. Jiwoo looked up to see Commander Veltar, an Altarian with gray skin and 4 arms. She had read about him. He was one of the Academy's toughest instructors. The cadets quickly sorted themselves into groups. The Saurids, tall reptile-like beings, stood together and hissed softly to each other. The Vraks, who looked like giant insects, clicked their mandibles in what Jiwoo guessed was their language. The Torhans, covered in natural armor, stomped their heavy feet. Jiwoo looked around for other humans. She finally saw one, a young man with black hair who looked as nervous as she felt. She walked over to him. "I'm Jiwoo Park," she said in Korean, hoping he would understand. "Haewon Kim," he replied, looking relieved. "I was starting to think I was the only human here." "Just us two, it looks like," Jiwoo said. They stood together, a tiny group compared to the others. Commander Veltar's voice boomed across the bay. "Welcome to the Galactic Defense Academy. You are here because your worlds believe you have potential. I am here to test that belief. Many of you will fail, some of you will quit. The few who remain will become the galaxy's protectors." His 4 eyes scanned the crowd and stopped on Jiwoo and Haewon. "Humans," he said, and Jiwoo heard disgust in his voice. "Your species is new to this galaxy. You have no proven battle history. Your technology is basic. Your bodies are weak. I do not know why Earth was given spots in this academy, but you are here. Try not to embarrass yourselves too badly." Several alien cadets made sounds that Jiwoo realized were laughter. Her face felt hot with shame, but she kept her expression neutral. The commander continued his speech, but Jiwoo barely listened. She watched the other cadets instead. A Saurid named Thais stood at the front of his group. Even among the tall reptiles, he was impressive. His scales were dark green and his yellow eyes showed intelligence and confidence. Other cadets seemed to respect him already. Near the Saurid stood a crystal being called Blix. Its body was made of what looked like living diamond. Light passed through it in beautiful patterns. Jiwoo had read that crystal beings were some of the smartest creatures in the galaxy. "Follow your assigned guides to your quarters," Commander Veltar ordered. "Classes begin tomorrow at 600 Standard Time. Do not be late." Jiwoo and Haewon followed a small robot through the station's corridors. The walls were covered with pictures of famous academy graduates. Most were aliens she didn't recognize. She saw only 3 humans in all the pictures, and they were from recent years. "I heard the dropout rate is 60%, Haewon whispered as they walked. 90% for humans, Jiwoo replied quietly. She had done her research. Their rooms were small but clean. Each had a bed, a desk, and a computer terminal. Jiwoo's room was next to Haewon's, which made her feel a little better. That evening, she went to the cafeteria for dinner. The room was enormous and filled with hundreds of cadets. Different species sat in their own groups. The food dispensers offered meals for every type of biology. But Jiwoo had trouble figuring out which options were safe for humans. She finally got something that looked like meat and vegetables and found an empty table. As she ate, she listened to the conversations around her. Most were in languages she didn't understand, but she caught some standard galactic. "Did you see those humans?" said a Vrak at a nearby table. "They look so small and weak." "I heard their homeworld has low gravity," replied another. "They probably can't even lift standard equipment." "The Academy is getting desperate if they're accepting primitives," added a third voice. Jiwoo kept eating, pretending not to hear. But inside she felt angry and determined. She had worked her whole life to get here. She had scored in the top 1% on every test Earth had given her. She spoke 5 languages and had trained in multiple fighting styles. But none of that seemed to matter now. Here she was just a weak human from a primitive world. After dinner, she returned to her room and activated the computer terminal. The Academy's training programs were available for preview. She looked at the course list: Advanced Weapons Systems, Starship Combat Theory, Xenobiology, Tactical Analysis, and dozens of others. Many of the programs were designed for non-human physiology. The weapons were sized for beings much larger than her. The armor was made for different body shapes. Even the computer interfaces seemed designed for creatures with more than 2 hands. Jiwoo leaned back in her chair and sighed. Tomorrow would be her first day of classes. She had no idea how she would compete with beings who were bigger, stronger, and had access to technology she barely understood. But she was here now. She had made it to the Academy against all odds. Her parents had sacrificed everything to give her this chance. She thought of her father, who had worked 3 jobs to pay for her education. She thought of her mother, who had cried when Jiwoo left Earth. She would not give up. She would find a way to succeed, even if every other being in the galaxy thought she was a joke. Jiwoo closed the computer and went to bed. Tomorrow the real test would begin. 3 weeks had passed since Jiwoo arrived at the Academy. Her days were filled with classes that seemed designed to prove she didn't belong there. The advanced weapons were too heavy for her to lift properly. The starship controls were made for beings with 4 arms or tentacles. Even the simple task of reading alien text on screens hurt her eyes after a few hours. Every day brought new humiliation. In combat simulations, she finished last. In physical training, she couldn't keep up with the larger aliens. Her test scores were barely passing while other cadets excelled easily. "Maybe I should just go home," Haewon said one evening as they sat in the nearly empty cafeteria. He looked tired and defeated. His uniform was torn from another failed training exercise. "You can't quit," Jiwoo said, though she had thought the same thing many times. "We're representing all of humanity here." "Representing what? Our ability to fail?" Haewon pushed his food around his plate. "Dicey scored perfect on today's tactical exam. Flick solved the navigation problem in half the time limit. What did we do?" "We embarrassed ourselves again." Jiwoo couldn't argue with him. Earlier that day, she had tried to use a standard plasma rifle during weapons training. The weapon was so heavy that she could barely aim it. When she finally fired, the recoil knocked her backward onto the ground. The other cadets had laughed so hard that Instructor Keth had to shout for silence. But something had happened during that moment on the ground. As Jiwoo lay there looking up at the ceiling, she had started thinking differently. The plasma rifle was designed for creatures much larger than humans. Of course it was too heavy and had too much recoil, but what if she didn't try to use it the same way everyone else did? "I have an idea," she told Haewon, "but I need to test something first." The next morning brought their first major challenge, a survival exercise on Karos 7, a hostile planet with dangerous wildlife and poisonous plants. The cadets would be dropped in teams of 5 and had to survive for 3 days using only basic supplies. Jiwoo found herself grouped with Blix, the crystal being, Vrex, a heavily armored Torhan, Nith, a flexible tentacled Aquarian, and surprisingly Thais, the proud Saurid. None of them looked happy about having a human on their team. "Try not to slow us down," This said as their transport approached the planet. His yellow eyes looked at her with disgust. "This exercise requires real survival skills, not primitive human instincts." The planet's surface was covered in thick jungle. The air was hot and humid, filled with the sounds of alien creatures. Their supplies were basic: water purification tablets, emergency rations for 3 days, a basic shelter kit, and a communication device for true emergencies only. Within an hour, Jiwoo realized her teammates had major problems. Blix's crystal body was beautiful but fragile. The humid air made condensation form on its surface, making it hard for the being to see clearly. Vrex's heavy armor was perfect for battle, but terrible for jungle travel. The Torhan was already breathing hard from the heat. Nith needed to stay wet, but the planet's water sources were full of acid that burned its tentacles. This was the most adapted to the environment, but even he struggled with the unfamiliar plants and sounds. "We need to find water," Vrex announced, pulling out a sophisticated scanner. "My equipment shows a stream 2 kilometers north." They headed north following Vrex's scanner. But as they walked, Jiwoo noticed things the others missed. The way certain birds flew told her which direction might have water closer than 2 kilometers. The color of some leaves showed which plants were safe to touch and which were poisonous. The sound of insects warned her when dangerous predators were nearby. She had learned these skills during camping trips with her father on Earth. They seemed simple and primitive compared to alien technology, but they worked. When they reached the stream Vrex had found, Neth immediately jumped in to cool off. A second later, the being screamed and jumped out. The water had burned its tentacles badly. "The acid concentration is too high," Blick said, analyzing the water with its internal sensors. "We cannot use this source." The team looked worried. They were already tired from the difficult journey, and now they had no water source. Jiwoo stepped forward. "Follow me," she said quietly. She led them to a spot she had noticed earlier, a place where morning dew collected on large leaves. The water was pure and safe. She showed them how to collect it efficiently using techniques her father had taught her. "How did you know this would work?" Blix asked, its crystal body shimmering with curiosity. "On Earth, people survived for thousands of years without scanners," Jiwoo explained. "You learn to read the signs nature gives you." As the day went on, more problems appeared. Vrex's scanner broke when he dropped it. Theis's knowledge of stellar navigation was useless under the thick jungle canopy. But Jiwoo's simple human methods kept working. She showed them how to build a shelter using living branches instead of their artificial kit, making it cooler and better hidden from predators. She identified which local fruits were safe to eat, extending their food supplies. She even figured out how to make a simple water filter using sand, cloth, and charcoal from their fire. On the second night, their camp was attacked by a pack of wolf-like creatures with acid saliva. Vrex tried to fight them with brute force but couldn't move fast enough in his heavy armor. Theis used his natural weapons, but there were too many attackers. Blix and Neith could only hide. Jiwoo did something completely different. Instead of fighting the creatures directly, she used misdirection. She threw rocks to make noise in different directions, confusing the pack. She used burning branches to create barriers, making the creatures think they were surrounded by fire. She even imitated the howl of a larger predator she had heard earlier, scaring some of the pack away. "Impossible," Theis said afterward, staring at Jiwoo with new respect. "How did you know to do those things? Your species has no natural weapons or armor. Humans survive by being smarter than stronger creatures," Jiwoo replied. "We learned to use our brains instead of our muscles." By the third day, the team was working differently. Instead of relying only on their technology and natural abilities, they started asking Jiwoo for her opinion. She taught them how to move quietly through the jungle, how to find food and water, and how to avoid dangerous areas. When the transport came to pick them up, their team was in better shape than most others. Several teams had used their emergency communicators to call for rescue. Others had run out of food or water. But Jiwoo's team had not only survived but learned new skills. Back at the academy, Instructor Keth reviewed their performance reports. The insectoid Vrak looked at Jiwoo with compound eyes that showed interest instead of dismissal. "Cadet Park," he said in his clicking voice. "Your methods were unconventional but effective. Where did you learn these survival techniques?" "From my father, sir," Jiwoo replied. "He taught me how humans lived before we had advanced technology." "Interesting." Keth clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "Perhaps there is value in these primitive methods after all." Word of the survival exercise spread through the academy. Some cadets still laughed at the humans, but others began to look at Jiwoo differently. She had proven that human methods could work, even if they seemed simple and basic. But Jiwoo knew this was just the beginning. The real tests were still to come, and she would need every advantage she could find to prove that humans belonged among the stars. News of Jiwoo's survival exercise success had spread through the academy, but not everyone was impressed. Most alien cadets still saw it as luck or a simple accident. After all, surviving in a jungle was basic, compared to the advanced military tactics they would need as galactic defenders. Commander Veltar seemed particularly annoyed by the attention Jiwoo was getting. During their next weapons training session, he made sure to pair her against Thais in hand-to-hand combat. "Let us see if primitive human methods work against a trained warrior," Veltar announced to the class. This was nearly twice Jiwoo's size and weight. His reptilian muscles were built for power and speed. He had natural armor and claws that could cut through metal. Every other cadet expected this fight to end quickly. "I will try not to hurt you too badly." "Human?" This hissed as they faced each other in the combat ring. Jiwoo bowed respectfully, the way her martial arts teacher on Earth had taught her. This looked confused by this gesture. In galactic military training, opponents simply saluted and began fighting. The match started. This came at her directly, using his superior reach and strength. This was how all Saurid warriors fought, with overwhelming force and precision. Jiwoo did something unexpected. Instead of trying to match his strength, she moved out of the way. This swung his clawed hand where her head had been a moment before. Jiwoo was already somewhere else, circling around him. He turned to face her and attacked again. Again she wasn't there. "Stand still and fight!" Thais roared, frustrated by her constant movement. But Jiwoo had no intention of standing still. Her father had taught her Aikido when she was young. Her mother had shown her Taekwondo. Both arts were about using an opponent's strength against them, not meeting force with force. When Thais charged at her again, Jiwoo did something that made the watching cadets gasp. Instead of dodging, she moved toward him at the last second. She grabbed his extended arm and used his own momentum to throw him across the ring. The mighty Saurid warrior crashed into the padded wall and slid to the ground. For a moment, there was complete silence in the training room. This got up slowly, his pride hurt more than his body. Impossible. How did a weak human do that? "You did it," Jiwoo replied calmly. "I just helped." The match continued, but now This was angry and confused. Every time he tried to use his superior strength, Jiwoo found a way to turn it against him. When he grabbed for her, she slipped away and struck pressure points that made his arms go numb. When he tried to pin her down with his weight, she rolled and twisted in ways that seemed impossible. After 10 minutes, This was exhausted and frustrated. Jiwoo was barely breathing hard. She had been moving constantly, but she had used his energy, not her own. "Enough," Commander Veltar shouted. He looked shocked by what he had seen. "Cadet Park wins this match." The other cadets stared at Jiwoo with new respect. This, who had been unbeaten in combat training, had been defeated by the smallest cadet in their class. "How?" Blix asked her afterward. Its crystal body shimmered with curiosity. "Your species has no natural weapons. You are smaller and weaker than Thais, yet you won." "Humans developed fighting styles for when we faced stronger opponents," Jiwoo explained. "Large predators, bigger humans, creatures with natural weapons. We learned that being smart was better than being strong." Word of the combat match reached the Academy's senior staff. Dr. Kun-ho Choi, a human military strategist visiting from Earth, requested to meet with Jiwoo. He was one of the few humans who had earned respect in galactic military circles. "I heard about your fight with the Saurid," Dr. Choi said when they met in his temporary office. "You use traditional Earth martial arts?" "Yes, sir. Aikido and Taekwondo mainly." "Interesting. The galactic military has studied human fighting techniques, but they dismissed them as primitive. Too simple for modern warfare, they said." Dr. Choi smiled. "Perhaps they were wrong. Sir, may I ask you something?" "Of course. Why do they all think humans are so inferior? We made it to the stars. We developed advanced technology. We're not that different from them." Dr. Choi was quiet for a moment. "It's not about what we've accomplished, Jiwoo. It's about how we think. Most galactic species developed along similar paths. They became logical, predictable, efficient. They solved problems the same ways. But humans, we're chaotic, unpredictable. We make decisions that don't always make logical sense. To them, that makes us primitive. But that's also our advantage?" "Exactly. In their rush to become perfect logical beings, they lost something we never did: the ability to think outside expected patterns." A few days later, Jiwoo got the chance to prove Dr. Choi's theory. The Academy announced a major fleet simulation exercise. Each cadet would command a small squadron of ships against an advanced AI opponent. The AI had been programmed with the tactical knowledge of the galaxy's greatest military minds. Most cadets spent days studying traditional galactic battle strategies. They memorized formation patterns, optimal firing sequences, and standard tactical responses. These were methods that had been refined over thousands of years of space warfare. Jiwoo took a different approach. Instead of studying galactic tactics, she read about Earth's military history. She learned about ancient battles where smaller forces had defeated larger ones through unexpected strategies. She studied guerrilla warfare, psychological tactics, and the art of misdirection. When the simulation day arrived, Jiwoo watched the other cadets go first. Thez commanded his squadron with perfect sword precision. His ships moved in flawless formations and executed textbook battle strategies. The AI countered every move expertly. Having been programmed to expect exactly these tactics, Theiss lost badly. Blix tried a more intellectual approach using complex mathematical calculations to predict optimal strategies. But the AI had access to the same mathematics and could calculate faster. Blix's squadron was defeated even more quickly. One by one, the alien cadets failed. Their strategies were too predictable. The AI had been designed to counter every known galactic military doctrine. Finally, it was Jiwoo's turn. She entered the simulation chamber and took control of her small squadron. On her screens, she could see the enemy fleet, larger and better armed than her own ships. Instead of forming a traditional battle line, Jiwoo scattered her ships randomly. Instead of engaging the enemy directly, she had them retreat in different directions. To the watching instructors, it looked like chaos. Like she had no plan at all. The AI was confused. It had expected Jiwoo to use either human adaptations of galactic tactics or primitive Earth strategies from the pre-space era. But what she was doing matched no known military doctrine. Jiwoo's ships continued their seemingly random movements. They appeared to run away, then suddenly attacked from unexpected angles. They used damaged ships as decoys while hidden ships struck critical targets. They even pretended to have technical failures, making the AI think they were easier targets than they really were. "What is she doing?" Commander Veltar asked Dr. Choi, who was observing the simulation. "Something no galactic military mind would think of," Dr. Choi replied with a smile. "She's making it up as she goes along." The AI tried to adapt to Jiwoo's tactics, but there was nothing consistent to adapt to. Every time it thought it understood her strategy, she changed to something completely different. She used feints, misdirection, and pure unpredictability. In the end, Jiwoo's smaller, weaker squadron defeated the AI's superior force. She had won not through superior firepower or perfect tactics, but through sheer human unpredictability. The simulation chamber was silent as Jiwoo emerged. Every instructor and cadet stared at her with amazement. She had done something none of them had thought possible. How? Admiral Zenth, the Academy's commandant, asked her directly. The ethereal luminar being glowed brighter with excitement. The AI was programmed to counter every known strategy. "How did you defeat it?" "I didn't use any known strategy, sir," Jiwoo replied. "I used human chaos." That night, the Academy's communication systems buzzed with reports being sent to military headquarters across the galaxy. For the first time, galactic leaders began to seriously consider that these primitive humans might have something valuable to offer after all. 2 months had passed since Jiwoo's victory in the fleet simulation. The Academy buzzed with new interest in human tactical methods. Several alien cadets had tried to copy her chaotic strategies, but they failed badly. Their logical minds couldn't truly embrace the randomness and unpredictability that made Jiwoo's approach work. Captain Myra Pak, a liaison officer from Earth's Defense Force, arrived at the Academy to study these developments. She was a veteran of several human conflicts and had earned respect among some galactic military circles. Her presence gave the human cadets more confidence, but also put more pressure on them to succeed. "The galaxy is watching us now," Captain Pak told Jiwoo and Haiwan during a private meeting. "Your success has opened doors, but it's also created expectations. Earth needs you to prove that human methods aren't just lucky accidents." Jiwoo felt the weight of representing her entire species. Every test, every exercise, every decision was being analyzed by military observers from dozens of worlds. She had gone from being ignored as a primitive joke to being studied as a potential game changer. But the real test came sooner than anyone expected. On a quiet Tuesday morning, emergency alarms rang throughout Nexus Prime. Jiwoo woke to flashing red lights and the urgent voice of Admiral Zenth over the communication system. "All personnel to emergency stations. We have received a priority distress signal from Research Station Kepler 7. Unknown hostile forces have attacked the station. All communication has been lost. Within hours, the Academy's corridors were filled with organized chaos. Senior instructors prepared for deployment, while cadets were ordered to continue their studies. But everyone knew this was different from normal emergencies. Research Station Kepler-7 was one of the galaxy's most important scientific facilities. It housed researchers from 30 different species working on advanced technology projects. More importantly, it was heavily defended with the latest galactic military equipment and staffed with experienced security forces. The first rescue mission launched within 6 hours. A full galactic fleet with the Academy's best instructors and most advanced weapons headed for Kepler-7. They were confident that superior firepower and proven tactics would quickly resolve the situation. Jiwoo and the other cadets watched news feeds and listened to radio communications as the rescue fleet approached the station. The first reports were optimistic. The attacking force seemed small compared to the rescue fleet. Then everything went wrong. Enemy contact, came the voice of the fleet commander over the radio, beginning standard engagement protocol. For the next hour, the cadets listened to increasingly desperate communications. The galactic fleet's advanced weapons had no effect on the attackers. Their sophisticated battle strategies were being countered perfectly. Ships that should have been invincible were being destroyed one by one. They adapt to everything we do, the fleet commander reported. Every weapon, every tactic, every strategy. They counter it perfectly within minutes. We need immediate reinforcements, but reinforcements face the same problem. 3 more galactic fleets were sent to Kepler-7 over the next 2 days. All of them were defeated by an enemy that seemed able to adapt to any technology or strategy the galaxy's best military minds could devise. The Academy's war room became a center of desperate planning. Admirals and generals from across the galaxy arrived to analyze the situation. They studied every available piece of data, tried every known tactical approach, and consulted the greatest military computers ever built. Nothing worked. The enemy, now identified as a species calling themselves the Devourers, possessed technology that could instantly adapt to and counter any known galactic military doctrine. They seemed to learn and evolve their defenses faster than any attack could overcome them. "It's impossible," Commander Veltar said during one strategy meeting. "No force should be able to adapt this quickly to every different approach. They counter Saurid tactics, Vrak strategies, Torhan brute force, even Luminar energy manipulation. How can they know everything?" Dr. Choi had been studying the battle reports with growing interest. "They don't know everything," he said quietly. "They know galactic doctrine. All of your species develop similar logical approaches to warfare. You all think in patterns these Devourers can recognize and counter. Are you suggesting our methods are flawed?" Admiral Zenth asked, his ethereal form glowing with irritation. "Not flawed," Dr. Choi replied. "Just predictable. Your greatest strength, logical, efficient thinking, has become a weakness against an enemy that can adapt to logic." "Then what do you suggest?" demanded General Krath, a massive Torhan who commanded one of the destroyed fleets. "If logic doesn't work, what does?" Dr. Choi looked at Jiwoo, who had been listening quietly in the corner. "Chaos," he said. "Pure, unpredictable human chaos." The war room fell silent. The idea that primitive human methods might succeed where the galaxy's greatest military minds had failed seemed ridiculous. But they were running out of options. "The humans cannot seriously be considered for this mission," General Krath protested. "They are cadets, untested. Their methods are untried in real combat." "Their methods are untried against galactic opponents," Captain Pack corrected. "But humans have been fighting unpredictable warfare for thousands of years, against each other, against animals, against impossible odds. We survived by being chaotic when logic failed." Admiral Zenth considered the proposal. 300 researchers and staff were trapped or dead at Kepler-7. 4 galactic fleets had been destroyed. Conventional military approaches had failed completely. "What would you need?" he asked Dr. Choi. "A small force of humans with basic equipment. No advanced galactic technology that the Devourers can adapt to. No standard military doctrine they can predict. Just human ingenuity and chaos theory." "Impossible," Commander Veltar said. "You want to send primitive humans with basic weapons against an enemy that defeated our best fleets?" "I want to send something the enemy has never encountered," Dr. Choi replied. "Something they can't predict or adapt to because it's based on pure unpredictability." The debate continued for hours, but in the end, desperation won. The galactic military had no other options left to try. Very well, Admiral Zenth announced. We will authorize a human mission to Kepler-7, but it will be a small force only. If you fail, we will not risk more resources on primitive methods. Jiwoo felt her heart racing. She was being asked to lead humanity's first real military mission in galactic space. If she failed, Earth would be seen as incapable of contributing to galactic defense. If she succeeded, it might change how the galaxy viewed humans forever. I'll need a team, she said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. Choose carefully, Captain Pak advised. You'll only get one chance at this. Jiwoo looked around the room at the alien faces staring at her with mixtures of hope and doubt. In a few hours, she would be heading into battle against an enemy that had defeated the galaxy's best military forces. She thought about her parents back on Earth, who had sacrificed so much for her education. She thought about all the humans who dreamed of proving themselves among the stars. Most of all, she thought about the hundreds of researchers trapped at Kepler-7, waiting for someone to save them. When do we leave? She asked. Jiwoo's mission team was small by necessity. Only 5 humans were available at the academy. Herself, Haiwan Kim, Captain Pak, a senior cadet named Tai Min Yoon, and So Young Lee, a recent transfer student who specialized in communications. Against an enemy that had destroyed entire galactic fleets, they seemed impossibly outmatched. Their ship was equally modest, an old Earth transport vessel with basic weapons and minimal shielding. No advanced galactic technology that the Devourers could adapt to, no sophisticated battle computers or energy shields, just human engineering and ingenuity. Remember, Dr. Choi told them before departure, your advantage is that you're unpredictable. The moment you start thinking like galactic military doctrine, you lose that advantage. Trust your human instincts. As their ship approached Kepler-7, Jiwoo studied the research station through their basic sensors. The structure was massive, designed to house thousands of researchers and their equipment. But something was wrong with its appearance. Strange growths covered parts of the hull, and the usual traffic of supply ships was nowhere to be seen. Enemy vessels detected, So Young reported from the communications station. 3 ships, unknown configuration. They're different from anything in our databases. On the main screen, Jiwoo saw the Devourer ships for the first time. They looked organic, like living creatures more than constructed vessels. Their hulls seemed to shift and change as she watched, adapting their shapes for unknown purposes. They've seen us, Taemin announced. All 3 ships are moving to intercept. This was the moment of truth. Every galactic fleet had approached the Devourers using standard military formations and tactics. Every fleet had been destroyed when the enemy adapted to their strategies. Scatter formation, Jiwoo ordered. Random vectors, no pattern. That's not a real military formation, Haiwan said nervously. Exactly, Jiwoo replied. So Young broadcast random radio signals. Different frequencies, different languages, make no sense. Taemin, fire warning shots in random directions, but don't aim at their ships yet. To any galactic military observer, the human approach would have looked insane. Their ship movements had no logical pattern. Their communications were meaningless noise. Their weapons fire seemed completely random, but the Devourer ships hesitated. Their adaptive systems had been designed to counter logical military strategies. They didn't know how to respond to complete chaos. One ship is approaching, Captain Pak reported. Still maintaining distance, probably scanning us. Perfect, Jiwoo said. Haiwan, start broadcasting Earth music. Classical, rock, folk songs, whatever you have. Mix it randomly. Music? Trust me. The combination of random ship movements, meaningless communications, scattered weapon fire, and Earth music created a pattern of behavior unlike anything the Devourers had encountered. Their ships continued to hesitate, their adaptive systems unable to find a logical response to illogical actions. Now we go to Phase 2, Jiwoo announced. Everyone remember, we're not trying to defeat them in direct combat. We're trying to confuse them long enough to rescue the researchers. How do we get to the station? Taemin asked. Those ships will intercept us. Not if they don't know where we're going, Jiwoo smiled. So Young, send false course data to multiple locations. Make it look like we're planning to attack different targets. Haiwan, prepare the landing shuttle but launch it toward the opposite side of the station from where we actually want to go. The human ship continued its chaotic dance around the Devourer vessels. Every few minutes they would change tactics completely. Sometimes they acted aggressive, sometimes defensive. Sometimes they just seemed to wander randomly through space. The Devourer's adaptive technology kept trying to counter human strategies, but there were no consistent strategies to counter. Just as the alien ships would adapt to one approach, the humans would switch to something completely different. "It's working," Captain Pak said with amazement. "They're so busy trying to figure out what we're doing, they're not effectively attacking us." "Phase 3, Jiwoo announced. "Time for the real rescue." While the Devourer ships were focused on their main vessel, Jiwoo and So-young took a small escape pod toward the research station. They used the station's own bulk to hide their approach, staying close to the hull where the Devourer's sensors couldn't track them effectively. The station's docking bays were sealed, but Jiwoo had expected this. Instead of trying to force their way through the main entrances like galactic forces would do, she looked for maintenance hatches and emergency access points. Humans had built similar stations and knew their weaknesses. Inside the station, the situation was worse than they had feared. The Devourers hadn't just attacked, they had infected the station with some kind of biological agent. Strange growths covered the walls, and the air recycling systems were failing. But they could hear voices, survivors calling for help from sealed research labs and emergency shelters. "The main computer core," So-young said, checking her portable scanner. "If we can reach it, we can override the lockdown systems and free the survivors." Getting to the computer core meant traveling through sections of the station that were heavily infected with Devourer bioweapons. Any galactic military force would have used heavy armor and sophisticated decontamination equipment. Jiwoo took a different approach. She studied the infection patterns and realized the biological agent responded to energy signatures. The more advanced technology someone used, the more aggressive the bioweapons became. "Basic equipment only," she told So-young. "Mechanical tools, chemical propulsion, simple electronics. Nothing that would trigger their adaptive responses." They made their way through the station using equipment that would have seemed primitive to any galactic observer. Manual override tools, basic cutting torches, simple breathing apparatus. But the Devourer bioweapons ignored them, having been designed to counter sophisticated galactic technology. In the computer core, Jiwoo found something that amazed her. The Devourers hadn't tried to destroy the research station's data. Instead, they had been studying it, learning from it, adapting their own technology based on what they found. They're not just adaptive in combat, she realized. They're trying to absorb all galactic knowledge and technology. That's how they counter everything so effectively. "Can you stop it?" So-young asked. Jiwoo thought about the problem. The Devourers were using the station's own advanced computers to process and adapt galactic military data. But what if she gave them data they couldn't process? She accessed Earth's military history database and began uploading everything. Ancient human conflicts, guerrilla warfare tactics, psychological operations, deception strategies, and most importantly, the complete chaos theory mathematics that human military theorists had developed. "What are you doing?" So-young asked as alarms began ringing throughout the station. "Giving them indigestion," Jiwoo replied. "Human military thinking is based on chaos and unpredictability. If they try to adapt to it, their systems will overload." The effect was immediate. Throughout the station, the Devourer bioweapons began reacting erratically. The organic growths on the walls started dissolving. The adaptive systems that had been countering galactic technology began breaking down. Emergency lockdown systems disengaging, the station's computer announced. Life support returning to normal parameters. Doors began opening throughout the station as Jiwoo's chaos upload disrupted the Devourer control systems. Survivors emerged from emergency shelters and sealed laboratories, blinking in amazement at their unexpected rescue. "How?" asked Dr. Zara Okafor, the station's chief researcher. 4 galactic fleets couldn't break through their defenses. How did 2 humans with basic equipment succeed? "We didn't fight their strengths," Jiwoo explained as they helped evacuate survivors. "We used their strengths against them. Their ability to adapt perfectly to logical systems became a weakness when we fed them pure illogical chaos." The evacuation took 6 hours. By the time the last researchers were safely aboard rescue ships, the Devourer vessels had withdrawn completely. Their adaptive systems, overloaded by trying to process human chaos theory, needed time to recover and recalibrate. Back at the academy, Jiwoo found herself facing a very different reception than when she had first arrived. The same alien cadets who had mocked her as primitive now looked at her with genuine respect. Admiral Zenth addressed the assembled academy in the main auditorium. Today we learned an important lesson about the nature of strength and intelligence. We assumed that advancement meant leaving primitive methods behind. We were wrong. He gestured to Jiwoo, who stood with her human teammates on the stage. These humans have shown us that chaos and unpredictability are not signs of primitive thinking. They are sophisticated tools that can succeed where logic alone fails. Commander Veltar, who had once dismissed humans as too weak for the academy, stood to speak. I formally request that human tactical methods be added to our core curriculum. All galactic military forces should learn to think with human unpredictability. The changes came quickly after that. The Academy restructured its programs to include human chaos theory and unpredictable warfare tactics. Jiwoo found herself appointed as an instructor, teaching aliens how to think like humans when logic wasn't enough.